It started when I was really young. My parents were very young as well. So it was just kind of like being sprung into the world of like, my parents didn't know what they were doing yet either. So yeah, I was really young and started suffering from like anxiety, which then came hand in hand with depression as a kid. I started seeing a child psychiatrist when I was around 6.
Yeah.
And then things like got a bit hard with high school and things, you know, all the pressures of conformity, I guess. Like I just didn't feel like I fit in at all. And so I was already quite struggling a lot. And then I went through quite a few traumas, and one being a main one, which was an assault when I was overseas. Yeah, and I was 16, and so what happened to me was I developed complex comorbid PTSD, and how do I explain it? It was like after the main trauma that happened, all these little things from my childhood or just from situations I'd been through kind of started coming out in the way that the trauma would as well. So it kind of escalated everything bad that had ever happened to me in my brain, and I was just a wreck. Like I felt like everything was just crushing me, and no one could understand because I couldn't even speak about what had happened. And I couldn't imagine anyone else wanting to or feeling comfortable speaking about it because they wouldn't understand either. So
You were so young as well.
yeah, I was so young. I started becoming really physically unwell, and I think it had to do with the fact that I felt like I didn't love myself properly. I wasn't feeding myself, and like eating disorder symptoms. But then it also comes from the fact that you're always in like hyper sensitivity mode, and you always feel really anxious. So like you can lose weight really easily and find it a lot harder to gain weight. So I ended up on a medical ward for a long time, in and out, because of how thin I was, and my organs started failing, and I just let the trauma consume now, even though it was a part of my past. I let it consume me being in the now, and let it kind of define me. And then you get things like your thoughts are really disorientated from what's real. So I would have these ideas that everyone around me was against me just because of that like heightened sensitivity and heightened fear of people's intentions, and so start developing psychoses and like really strong beliefs against certain people, or strong beliefs that you can't do certain things or go to certain places because it's going to make you have an episode or you're going to get triggered. My lowest point was definitely when I finally like wanted help myself, and I reached out for help and tried to get help, but the help wasn't there. That was my lowest point, because before that, I guess, I was in comfort with the way I was feeling and acting. I didn't completely want help. I didn't even know what help I wanted or needed, or even what was wrong with me.
Yeah.
And then when I worked out what was going on and tried to seek help for it, I got misdiagnosed and pushed into boxes, and then re-traumatized, and things that you shouldn't treat someone with trauma, like things you shouldn't do to someone with trauma, were done to me because of how unwell my body was. And so it all became really intense when I actually like made the choice to try and get away from it, and to put my everything into changing my life. That's probably when it got most intense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what was that for you, pulling away from that and like really going on your own journey of healing?
So when I was in there quite often, they would just say that the things I was saying was because I was unwell, and some of it probably was, but a lot of the time I would tell them like I can't be here anymore, like I feel like being in this place is making my trauma worse, it's making me feel more anxious, and I feel like for treatment for an eating disorder you have to be there for quite a long time to get any results, and the whole time I was doing that there was no trauma therapy, so it would just like re-traumatize me because I had no idea what was going on around me, and yeah, so like eventually I guess surrendered to what they were trying to do over and over, and it didn't work over and over because they'd missed something. And yeah, then I ended up just taking it into my own hands, and I didn't really feel like the Western medicine approach was helping me, and I felt like they were overlooking things that could really help me and just focusing on anorexia or eating disorders, when the whole problem was that until I felt comfortable in the world, I couldn't move past the things that were making me not want to be in this world. Because the whole point of, I guess, my eating disorder, when I went through the trauma, it triggered a feeling of being contaminated and dirty, unclean. I didn't feel like I deserved to be in any space, to take up any space at all. And inside I felt so small. I wanted to shrink down the way I was on the outside to match that, because otherwise it felt really out of place, out of proportion. Yeah. Yeah, it's the main thing I think that affected my recovery and made it, I guess, harder, was that labels were put on what was going on with me, when trauma can come out in so many different avenues and ways that they couldn't have possibly worked out like that it was anything else other than trauma, just because when you go through something like that, so many different things happen in your brain, and you can just present symptoms of so many different So like after a life-changing experience or a traumatic experience, your body actually changes. Like, the best way to put it is that your body stores the trauma. So it's almost as if you have physical blocks as well as mental blocks. And so you get chronic pain, or pain in places that you can't quite describe why it'd be hurting, or like I've got really bad lower back pain. I have no idea why it happened, but I realised that it got a lot worse after the event for no reason, because obviously nothing happened to my back, but because of the stress that my body's under and the way that it can't produce things to look after me anymore. That's just, it ends up being that your body doesn't look after itself anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like a mental state can affect your physical state so much, and vice versa.
Yeah. Like,
felt that.
I felt when I wanted to get better, like when I finally realised I didn't want to live in a constant state of being traumatised and upset from something that had happened to me in the past, it wouldn't work because of all the damage that had been done to my body previously. It was like I wished I could just flick the switch in my brain and be like, okay, now I'm better. And also to let it empower you, like help other people. Like,
Exactly.
don't let it be your sad story. Let it be the story of how you saved yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got a great perspective.